Today, we are going to put buildings on our map. So what we'll want to do is expand our terrain first off so that we can have room for our buildings. So you can see I've gone over here to the modifier tab with our ground mesh selected, and since we had a UV map modifier on it, I have gone down to editable poly and I press 5 or the element button to select that entire section of polygons. I'm going to press W to get into move mode, hold shift and click drag on one of the axes here. So I can click drag, it'll duplicate that guy, and I can actually snap these together. I press S, you can see I have all of my little ticks there showing that it'll snap to vertices. I've got my vertex toggle up here enabled. If that toolbar may not be there by default, and if it's not, you can right click on the snaps toggle and you can set your vertex here. And I usually disable grid points, which is on by default. So as you can see there, I can click drag and it'll snap them together. I may also want to weld those vertices eventually. I'll just show you how to do that now. If you can press 1 or go into vertex mode here, Control A to select all, and then you can see I'm at 882 vertices. Control W will weld. It's down to 861. Basically, when we merge those two sections together, there's still duplicate vertices on top of each other. Now we've just welded them. So now we have a little bit more ground. I'm going to duplicate that one more time so we have more room for our buildings. Now we're going to add our buildings. So I already have my proxy masters file open. This is the file through which we'll copy our buildings to our map. So let's decide first what buildings we want to copy over. You can see there's actually two of most of the buildings here, and that's because there are tunnel versions. And underneath them, you'll see there's a little bit extra mesh on the proxy objects, and that is due to the fact that there's a basement. And this little mesh here, or this polygon, just denotes that this is where the ground is in the basement floor, so that we can build around it if we need to on the map. So let's select some of our buildings that we're going to use. I'm going to press F3 to go into wireframe mode. So I can see, just click and drag. It'll select all of the objects associated with the barracks. Now if I press H, I have the legacy select objects dialog pop up. For you it might be a little more like this. So we've got our barracks, we've got all the children objects, which include a few proxies. If you read my proxies tutorial, you'll see those end with a tilde. And a temp ground. Now that'll be important. A temp ground is not a proxy. That's going to be what helps us cut the hole in the terrain and then snap everything to it so that we have a hole in the ground so you can actually go to your basement. We are going to do that in a bit. In the meantime, we're going to also do our Soviet barracks, the non-tunnel version. And let's do war factories and refineries just so we have our basics. And let's also do ore silos. Okay, so the one without the frames is going to be the non-tunnel version. So we're going to hold Control and drag so that it adds to our selection. Hold Control and drag, select. I'm going to do the one without the basement. Okay, now that we have all our objects selected that we want to copy to our map, go to File, Save As, Save Selected. We'll just go to the desktop here, Save Untitled. Go open my other map. I have a shortcut here, Shift M. You can also go to Import, Merge. It'll do the same thing. So for me, Shift M, and go to my desktop, go to Untitled. Everything will be in there that I wanted to bring over. So we have our buildings here. Refinery. And since this is the parent object, everything that's associated with it will come along if you just move the parent object. So if I move this, you can see like the temp ground and the proxy inside are going to move along also. Our main thing right now is just placing these guys. We may actually want our ground to be even bigger so that there's a little more space here. But I am just going to move these guys. I'm going to rotate this guy. You can press E to rotate. You can press W to move. R will scale, but we're not going to do that for buildings. So I'm going to press E. I actually make sure my snapping for angle is on and that it's at 5 degrees, you can see. And so when I snap now, it's going to snap to every 5 degrees. I rotate 180 degrees. And there's some of our base buildings. Now let's place some Soviet buildings as well. I'm going to rotate the refinery 90 degrees. Let's take the Soviet barracks, and that's also not rotated the way we want it to. Let's rotate it this way, and we're going to take the Soviet war factory and rotate it inwards. It's always a good idea to have your war factories face towards the action. Oops, went the wrong way. Easily fixed. So here's our buildings. We are going to want to expand our ground to cover that. What I may do here is actually, I'm going to move the ground, duplicate it a couple more times here. We're going to go into element mode once more. I'm just going to do the shift drag method, clone to element. We're going to snap that. And if you're going to use snapping, you can press S to enable and disable it. And essentially what snapping does is it allows you to snap things to each other. And these buttons allow you to tell it what to snap to. So you can do vertices, pivots, midpoints. You're welcome to play with that. So I'm just going to weld everything at this point. We're down to 6,500 vertices, up to 6,400 polygons. I'm actually going to move these buildings a little bit further out. Excellent. Let's put that flame tower Soviet base. If you want to look at top view, you can press T. Put our ore silo over here next to the refinery. And put our allied ore silo next to its refinery, just so we're balanced. That pillbox is just going to come right out here. There's our bases. Now if we export as is, we're going to have everything here, but we are not going to have holes cut in the ground for our basements, particularly the barracks. For the buildings with no basements, you would have Z fighting, which is essentially two meshes on top of each other, and it looks really bad. So we don't want that. So we definitely want to cut holes in the ground. So I'm going to select my mesh here that I want to cut holes into. Go over here to editable poly again, and polygon mode. I'm actually just going to go into top view. Here, what we want to do is cut a hole out so that our temp ground can have room to breathe, and then we're going to snap everything together later. I'm going to click drag. Oops, I'm still in move mode, so I'm going to press Q to go to select mode. W is move, Q is select, click and drag, delete. We're going to do this for all the buildings now. Now we have our holes cut out. What we're going to do is attach these temp grounds to our main ground. And I have a shortcut key, since I use it so much, Shift A, set up for that. And it's the same thing as using this attach button or this attach button. You can hit attach and you can just click, click, click. Now it's all attached, and since the temp grounds do not have materials on them, if you attach something that does have a material to it, they will just automatically adopt that material, which is nice. Now what we want to do is weld everything together, and if you saw my Proxies tutorial, you saw a quick example of that. So we're going to go to Editable Poly, and we're going to... I have a shortcut key here under Customize UI. Collapse Poly. I have it set to Z. And this is also the dialog under which you would set all of your shortcut keys. So now, with Collapse Poly set to Z, I just press the Z several times with all the polygons, or all the vertices that I want to collapse. And it makes pretty quick work of what I want to do here. Now this particular method is actually going to have some interesting lighting going on because of the way that they spider web out. We'll go all the way around each of the buildings. Just snap these guys together. Okay, so my program crashed and I'm going to reopen it. Luckily it saved a copy of it. Okay, we're back. That was a very quick rundown of getting all the holes cut for the buildings in the ground. Now we're going to go ahead and export this guy. Very quick. I'm actually going to save as back to the original place. Now this is because when it crashed it saved the recovery file to a new location, so I just want to save that back to the original place. After verifying to a reasonable degree that the crash and recovery didn't lose anything in the file. Okay, now I have Mammoth open. I'm going to go to File, Open. Mine is called RA Test Map. Here's our test map from last time. If you want to increase your view plane, hold Alt and press plus on your numpad. It'll expand that out a bit. Last tutorial, I actually placed a vehicle, and I wanted to correct that. I think for vehicles, they have a few issues if you place the vehicle object itself. What you're supposed to do is place a spawner instead of the vehicle object itself. Looks pretty much exactly the same. The difference is that it'll behave correctly, and you also have a lot more options with it. We'll use a spawner instead. We'll have that APC there. We actually don't need our infantry spawner anymore. was a Soviet one too. Just delete that guy. Don't remember the controls to move around in Mammoth. You hold right click to look around. You can use WASD to move your view. You can use middle click to pan. And if you have a mouse button 4 and 5, you can actually rotate as well. And you can also move your camera forward and backward with middle mouse wheel. So now we are actually going to add building controllers to make our buildings work. If we just export this as is, it will work, but we will not be able to target or shoot the buildings or damage them or anything like that. I could actually just hit run game, and it should be able to launch straight to the game. It'll launch straight to the map. You can see I've got some errors in the top left. That is from the missing building controllers. But we have our map here, we have our buildings. And in the barracks here, we'll even have a basement. That we can go down to. Obviously there's nothing that's targetable or damageable in here. The PTs do work, those are proxied in, but they don't recognize that we own a barracks or a war factory or a refinery. So that all to say, let's get those added. I have over here on my favorites list, everything is shortcutted over here, so I can just place these easily. If you do not have them favorited, you'll find the buildings under buildings, and then you can expand each of these to find what you want to place. So you'll go to your preset and hit make, and that is what will place it, and it needs to be within around the center of your building or attached to it on the outside. For our smaller buildings, it won't be as big of an issue. I think this is our allied refinery, so it'll be all ref. I'm actually just going to get rid of those view spheres as well. So I'm going to hit make on the refinery controller. It looks like a little house. Before I go to the other building controllers, I actually have to place what's called a car maker, or car marker, as some call it. Tell the harvester where to dump, and it has to be inside the zone. So Control P will place your car marker. I'm actually going to do it outside so I can rotate it more easily. And rotating, hold Control and use 4 or 6 on your numpad to rotate it. And usually we put it backwards to the refinery. If you want to speed up rotation, you can actually hold down 0 also on your numpad and it'll speed up the rotation. Okay, so now we've placed that. Let's do the allied barracks. So it'll be all bar, make, and this one's real simple, just there. Okay, now we have a barracks. It's that simple. The hardest one by far always is the war factory. Hopefully we have some things proxied in here already. Let's place our building controller, and like the refinery, we're going to need to do a car marker. Control P, place that guy. You can see it's actually by default kind of going up the side of the building. We want to place it inside. So I actually am going to make it easier to work inside the building by selecting some of the proxied invisible meshes that are here and deleting them. This may sound strange, but because they're proxied, they will appear again the next time we load the map file, and it makes it so much easier to work inside here. I'm actually going to delete that too, and it'll be back later when we reload. I'm going to click drop to ground, so this guy stays grounded. If it is not dropped to ground, it can float, you can make it do anything you want, but drop to ground forces it to drop to the ground, so we want to use it sometimes. It is already rotated correctly, so we'll just move it into here. Okay, and you want it to be centered. This is where the vehicles that you buy are actually going to spawn. Okay, we've got that guy. Next up is to make our vehicle waypaths. Under presets, you go to waypath, vehicle, So you want to do vehicle waypath innate, and we're going to hit make. It'll place this guy, click and drag. You can see these green lines connect the waypath nodes. Press Control P, just like with the car maker, to make more. So we'll place our first one. We actually want to drop it to the ground, and we'll place the first one close to the car maker, and the next one will be straight out. So basically you want a set of 3 of these waypaths coming out. So we're going to do make. Now these are kind of the spots that the vehicles are going to pop out of. You know, some go to the left, some go to the middle, some go to the right. And you can make it as pretty as you want it to. Next important business is double click on one of these nodes, go to the waypath tab, innate path find, and human turn off. So you want innate path find and ground vehicle enabled. Do that for all 3. Allied base is set for now. We may need to do a few waypaths for the ore truck going out to the ore field, but for now we're just going to go to the Soviet base and do the same thing as we did on the Allied base. Now we pretty much have things set up. I am going to reload the map and hit save, and it'll reload it, give us our proxy objects back. Here it is, we've got our zone back and everything. Now let's render some lighting, rebuild vertex lighting. So whatever lighting settings you put on your map, it will process that light across the polygons. Now we have our shadows. As I mentioned earlier, those could be a little funky using our vertex light solve. But here we are. Got our trusty APC spawner here. Okay, now I'm going to hit run game. Here we are in game. Got our refinery, it's targetable. I can shoot it and damage it. Same with the barracks, same with the war factory. Our ore truck popped out. It's not going anywhere though. We'll set that up just a little bit later. Let's buy things. Here's a mammoth tank. Make sure it spawns okay. There it is. Everybody wants a mammoth tank. Okay.
Awaiting orders.
Okay, all of our things are here. Let's make the ore trucks do stuff. We need to place an ore truck field. Do I have that in my favorites? I might not actually. So we're going to go to Object, Script Zone All, or Script Zones. You can see here you've got gems, ore, mixed. We're going to do ore field. Now let's pretend for a minute that we actually placed ore and rocks and stuff out here. And this will be where the harvester harvests. We'll click Make with that preset selected. It's a tiny little zone. It's shaped like a box or a rectangle. We want to change that size. Sometimes I do 15, sometimes I do 20. And height is probably okay at 5. There we go, it's a little bit bigger. And I actually want to raise this off the ground a little bit. You can hold Shift, it'll move things vertically when you select them. Something else we'll need actually is to generate pathfind to make the ore trucks work. But first, I'm also going to place the Soviet one. You know, I could also copy the Allied one. I'm just gonna hit copy. Over here, I'm just gonna hit paste because I'm a cheater. Raise it slightly again. It's important to note that the center, the very center of the ore field zone should be inside the pathfind grid. And I'll show you the pathfind grid in just a moment. So it's actually called human. You get it on here to editor objects, pathfind generator, human. And you just click one of those anywhere and it'll generate pathfind starting from this origin point. So what I'm actually going to do is pathfinding, generate pathfind grid, hit OK. Just sped that up for you a little bit. Now that our pathfinding is done being generated, you can actually hit display sectors and it'll show you all your pathfind sectors. And you can use this to debug, you can see where AIs are going. Sometimes you got to fiddle with things a little bit to make them work a little better. It is a little bit finicky. Something else I've had to do lately, which may not always be the case, so always check this at the time that you do it because functionality can change after this video is recorded. Something I've had to do is create more way paths to go out to the field and back to the refinery, and to make the one from the field to the refinery a looping one. So I am actually going to do that really quickly. So now the important point here is for the one between the refinery and the field, it's going to go back and forth, so you want it to be two-way. I said looping earlier, I meant two-way. And this one we want to set also, doesn't need to be two-way. And do the same thing for the allies. I'm going to save my level. Now we're going to run it and hoping that the ore trucks will work.
Acknowledged.
There's our APC spawner. Right. It's going to harvest an invisible field here. Go, ore truck, go. You can see that one's working as well. I've got a flame tower to spin here. By the way, you can go into your console and type toggle spectator 1, toggle underscore spectator 1 will toggle your spectator status when you're hosting a LAN game. So you can use your mouse wheel to increase or decrease your speed, your fly speed, and you can fly around, you can fly through things, you can look at things, you can disable your HUD by using console HUD, and that will turn off your HUD. If you want to also turn off your FPS display, it'll be FPS. You can take screenshots of your beautifully blank map. It looks like both ore trucks dumped their ore and they're going back out to the field. So they are doing their jobs. That is great. Interestingly, note that I have placed snow on the building tops. There is definitely snow there, and this is not a snow map. So really quickly, I'm going to go back into my test map. Note that the snow mesh is not here. It's actually a proxy. I'm actually going to go into my object list here. And everything that has snow, I'm going to do wildcard, let's see, snow. There we go. Now it's selected every object that has snow. It's for the 6 buildings. Hit select, delete. Now, when I export this guy, the snow is going to be gone. I'm going to reopen. Now our snow is gone. I just regenerated light solve so that we'd have better lighting after the snow is removed. And now the snow is gone. And we have our buildings. They've been placed. Holes have been cut in the ground. We've made vehicles work. You can purchase vehicles. And things are ready to go.